And we're live. We're live, Dr. Kris. How are you, brother?
We did it again.
Yep. Look at us. So I was thinking about, I like to go to this place in Mexico and I get sun, but I like to go and I take my dog. My dog is very diligent about expecting me to take her for a walk every day.
Of course.
So I try to do it. I try to get a little exposure to the sun. But guess what? We have a topic today called recovering from summer skin damage. I go out and I walk around with my dog. I want to go to beautiful places with sun, but there's this little thing in the back of my head. Are you damaging your skin? So that's what our topic is about today. I'm going to roll the intro. You ready, Dr. Kris?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. If you're like most folks Dr. Kris Foosterhausen works with, you're active, you want to take ownership of your health, and you want to age gracefully. The problem is there is so much conflicting information out there about health and wellness, it's tough to know who to trust. Most providers are limited by what insurance will approve, so it can seem like they're only able to help you manage your health decline with more meds. On the DrKris.Life podcast, you'll learn how you can regain your confidence in your health journey. You'll learn helpful knowledge about programs, supplements, peptides, and hormones that Dr. Kris has used with thousands of patients just like you to help them crush their goals and be their best selves. So if you're ready to take charge of your health and are wanting to stay active and healthy so you can be a better parent, partner, or lover, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Dr. Kris podcast. And this is a place where you might grow some hair too, if you're lucky.
Again, two things I always notice there is why are they in a bathtub? Again, with robes on and wine. I mean, so many better places, right? But whatever. And I was like, who the hell's that doctor with no hair? But anyway, not before we get the show started, I did Peptide World Congress again this weekend. We were just talking about it a little bit, and I had so many people come up to me and say, something's different. You've lost weight, haven't you? Or you've added muscle, haven't you? And actually, my body composition is just about exactly the same as it was a year ago. And I said, no, it's just hair. That's all it is hair. Hair throws everything off. They're not used to it. So anyway.
Well, it changes your proportion, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. And like I was just telling you, that was what my lecture was actually on, was hair loss or hair growth, whichever side of the fence you want to look at. And we had really good responses. And I think we helped a lot of providers across the country with maybe some better approaches to hair loss.
Yeah, that's exciting. So today is recovering from skin damage. I noticed that as I aged and my hair started to thin, there would be places on my head that would get sunburnt that used to not. And I kind of worry from time to time, did I damage my skin? But I went to the skin doctor and he gave me a thumbs up. He just had some of those little age spots that he needed to zap.
Yep.
But other than that, we were on our way. So what are some of the, if we're going to go on a summer vacation, let's find out. You tell us a little bit about what we need to think about, what peptides, is there a concern? What's going on?
Yeah, well, the first thing is, I think, is just have a plan, right? Because I feel like so many times, and I'm not going to claim I've not ever been guilty of this, and that is, I used to just show up on the beach of Cancun or Playa del Carmen, actually, is where we used to love to go. Before life got so damn busy, we can't figure out a way to go back. But just show up, and I'd start the trip off with doing my sunblock, and then a few cocktails kicks in, and before I know it, I haven't sunblocked in a few hours. And inevitably by day 2, I was red as a lobster.
Mm-hmm.
And B, it certainly changes the trajectory of fun for your rest of your trip when you're sunburned like that. But then even worse than that is that chronic damage that you're doing to your skin. That, like I always say, my dad actually died from melanoma.
I didn't know that.
He was a farmer rancher his whole life and sun all the time. I mean, he wore caps and hats and things like that. But if that man ever put sunblock on one time, I would be extremely surprised by that because they just didn't know, right? Those things really didn't exist. They didn't know that that was actually causing things that could actually kill you. Because I think it's important to realize there's three types of skin cancers. There's squamous cell, there's basal cell, there's melanoma. Squamous cell, basal cell, unless you just completely ignore it for year after year, is just going to cause, how much skin do we have to remove to cure it, right? Like sometimes they can just freeze it off. Like those sunspots, age spots you talked about, typically I think it's 1 in 50 turn into cancer. So they just zap them and get rid of them and, take that chance away. But if one slips through the wickets and turns into a squamous cell or a basal cell, typically they just have to excise it and sew the skin back together. And that's called a Mohs procedure. But you don't die from those things. But a lot of people don't understand that melanoma actually can kill you, and actually can kill you fairly quickly. And it's that, there is a genetic component, but it's also sun damage. So I always tell everybody, like vitamin D, like we always talk about vitamin D. And how do you get vitamin D? Well, some of our foods have it added to it, but not really enough. We get it from sun through skin. And I always joke now, to actually get enough vitamin D in our region of Texas, a guy has to have 8 hours of shorts only. So swim trunks out by the pool, 8 hours a day of sun exposure to get proper vitamin D. And I always say, but I'm not recommending that, because then you're going to look 80 when you're 50, and you're going to see the dermatologist every 6 months to whack off skin cancers. So it's just not really what we want to do. So most people, when they go on that summer trip, they've actually planned it 6 months, 12 months, sometimes 18 months in advance. That's something they're really looking for. It's something they know. And so I think somewhat prepping of the skin is important. But let's go back even further. I'm going to even change the question just a tad, and that is how do I keep my skin looking youthful? And what you don't want to do is just wake up at 50 and decide, let's now do something with my skin. We can do that. Don't get me wrong. Please, if you're 50 and need help, come see us. But what I'm trying to say is if I can get my hands on the 20 somethings and the 30 somethings to start doing simple things early on, you'll actually save yourself from spending a lot of money down the road. I can tell the men and women who've actually been skin conscious when they're in their 50s, and the ones that just willy-nillied it and never cared. They're going to be the ones with the deep lines and wrinkles. They're going to be the ones that have the effects of that long-term sun. They're just going to simply look older. So, I think the first thing anyone's ever going to tell you, any dermatologist is ever going to tell you, the best way to avoid sun damage is to avoid the sun. But we're in Texas. And what is it, Steve? It's been over 100 degrees for like every day forever, it seems like.
Yep.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah, you're already
87. Yeah.
And so, the sun is intense this summer, as it always is, but I think even a little bit more than normal. So sun blocking is just super important, and actually getting a good sunblock, making sure you're getting a 30 SPF or greater, making sure that you're reapplying. That was always the biggest mistake I had. I did it once. I'm good, right? No, you're not. Most of the time you need to reapply every 3 to 4 hours, especially when you're in that, because you got to remember, most people are going maybe Caribbean for those summer vacations, closer to the equator. The closer you get to the equator, higher UV rays. Even Texas can be a little tame when it comes to like Mexico or those type places. We're just not ready for that kind of sun. So sun blocking, when we're out on the beach, making sure that maybe we're taking some time under the, the umbrella, actually trying to protect ourselves from that sun, or some of the early things that we can do.
So are there things that you can take? I'm just wondering, like supplements or maybe water. What is it that you would recommend that you could also add into your regimen?
So if we're talking about just general skin health, so when I did my hair lecture, there was a point that I really wanted to get across, and this was something that Dr. Seeds has taught us, is that any type of a skin reaction is actually a external reaction for an internal issue. Now, sunburn might be the exception. That you could have perfect skin and you lay out in the sun and just get sunburned. You've caused an external problem. But when it comes to the skin, many times when also people have poor skin or poor skin health, it's actually all related back to their gut health. So as crazy as it sounds, one of the best ways to have good skin is to have good gut health. It's important to remember, when we have bad, our gut is 80% of our immune system. Okay. Our immune system plays a role in everything. based on our genetics and our lifestyle is how that bad gut decides to show itself. Okay. It might show itself in one person with getting sick all the time. It might show it in another person getting chronic diseases. It might show in another person with actual skin disorders like eczema. And I always like to make the point, there's a good friend of mine. She's an amazing pediatrician up in Washington State, and her name is Cynthia Keller. She's one of the most polarizing lecturers you could ever listen to. And somebody asked her a question, and she said, they asked her, how do you treat eczema in kids? She's a pediatrician. She said, she thought about it, and she goes, now that you asked that, I don't treat eczema. And the lady said, what do you mean you don't treat eczema? And she goes, because I get my kids from birth and they don't get eczema. They don't get eczema because we treat the gut from the very first day that I take care of them, and my kids simply don't get eczema. She goes, now, occasionally I'll inherit a kid with eczema, and she does a great case study on this like 2-year-old toddler that had been to so many dermatologists and no one could fix the eczema. And you know how she approached it? She didn't treat the rash, she treated the gut. And as the gut health improved, the rash improved and eventually completely went away over 2 to 3 months by simply treating the gut. So anyway, I want to make sure that, and I probably won't bring it back up. Maybe I will, but I just want to make sure that we understand the correlation between our skin and gut and how important that is. And that's a whole topic upon itself of treating the gut. But, gut health is extremely important. Hydration. By the way, I want to announce something really cool product we have coming. We're going to have it in the next 2 weeks, and it's called iCell, ICELL. And, hydration status is not all just water intake. It's actually, is the water getting into the cells, intracellular? That's actually what's most important. And for different reasons, sometimes that doesn't always happen. And studies have proven if you take this formulation of very particular amino acids, which, by the way, you can make it on your own. It's a recipe that we supply to our patients, but it's quite laborious to make one batch, and you're supposed to drink like 2 liters over a day. Well, our good friends at New BioAge have actually put it together, and it's just going to be 1 scoop and 2 liters of water, and you drink it all day long for your hydration status. So we're extremely excited about that. Because hydration does mean a lot with skin. Crisanta, my wife, you know her, but maybe everybody watching doesn't. She can always tell I'm dehydrated. She'll come in and say, you've got to drink water. Your skin looks bad today. And so, which I'm probably dehydrated today. As we were talking about, I've had a few days run in a row of doing things that are out of my norm, a little bit more alcohol than usual. So that's going to maybe take me to my next step, alcohol. I don't know about patient or people listening, but alcohol use for most of my patients and myself goes up during the summer. It's just kind of when we're maybe by the pool or at the lake or on vacation. And, the dehydration that's caused by alcohol can be quite severe. And then also just the fact that as we drink alcohol many times, like I say, with diet, it allows our diet to get a little wonky. A lot of times it allows protecting our skin to get a little wonky too. We start to feel a little loose and we kind of quit worrying about other things that are quite important. Doing like monthly hydrofacials can be extremely important for the skin. That's a actual fun procedure. So many of the procedures we do aren't so fun, but this actually, people are relaxed. It feels good, but you get that immediate response of getting the few top layers off the skin and getting that nice, more youthful looking skin, getting rid of some of that very superficial sun damage. But then after your hydrofacial, it's so important that we use proper skincare. And I know a lot of practices do it, but we mainly only use the Zoe skin line. My ladies are all extremely well trained on how to walk a patient through a customer through their skin regimen and journey. We try to minimize it for the guys because we know guys are a 1 to 2, maybe 3-step thing. They just won't do more than that. I know I won't. Ladies, we try to really get to what they're looking for. There's one big pushback I always get is isn't that stuff really expensive? We hear it a lot. Isn't skincare really expensive? Well, first of all, no. Skincare is not cheap. Not here to say that. But what they don't usually realize is that a bottle of face wash will last me months. And when you really start thinking about, okay, if this bottle's, I don't know, I don't even know the cost, $100 and it lasts me 3 months, well, all of a sudden $33 isn't so expensive. So they don't realize that how the length of time, because you're really good pharmaceutical grade skincare, you use very, very small amounts of these products. And so many times they're overestimating what the true cost is per month of these products.
So I think sometimes when we're prepping for these vacations or we're thinking about them, I remember back in the day, I even would go if I was going on a cruise. I want to go and tan a little bit
Mhm,
before, because
mhm.
last thing you want to do is show up and be that guy that looks like he's, just
Agreed.
yeah, came out of, I don't know, the Arctic or something. But what are some other things that you can consider before you go?
Yeah, so I used to always. That's exactly what I used to do. My theory, and I'll say that I think my theory was okay, which was I'd rather control my sun exposure by going to a tanning bed, and I can control that for the month prior to get myself a base coat before I go down to Mexico and just get burnt to a crisp. Because even when I'm pretty good about applying sunblock, I'm such a fair skinned person. If I do not get sun, that I will actually still always burn and peel. Now, I think now we've got better ways of handling that. So that's the good news. I don't advocate tanning beds any longer for any reason. But back in the day, I thought that was better than just showing up white as my shirt and ending up red as the little logos or dots on my shirt. So I felt like in my mind that was better. Melanotan can be an amazing peptide to use in these scenarios. Melanotan is a melanocortin stimulator, which means it stimulates our system, which causes tanning within the body. Melanotan actually itself has some amazing anti-aging characteristics to it in addition to tanning. It just happens to be that we're talking about it for tanning purposes right now. And melanotan 2 is typically the most common. There's melanotan 1 and melanotan 2. I prefer melanotan 2 for tanning. It just seems to work a little bit better. But we can put these patients, but it is something we need to think about like a month in advance, okay? But like get them on the melanotan. Um, a lot of patients feel better on melanotan. They have a little more energy. They sleep a little bit better. But then at the end of the day, we start to get this slow tanning going on. And what's really crazy about melanotan is many times I hear patients that tell me, normally I can't tan at all, will actually be able to get somewhat of a tan with melanotan. So in my practice, now I do ask, I do recommend any providers using it to ask about skin cancer history, although studies do show skin cancer risk goes down with melanotan. But if they have an active skin cancer or, God forbid, an active melanoma, I think those need to be treated first before they take melanotan. But with that being said, I usually recommend my patients think about using melanotan multiple times a year. I use it 2, 3, 4 times a year. I use it pre-summer, kind of in that springtime. Even if I'm not going on vacation, I just prefer not to blend right in with my white shirts. So the bleed, I like a little contrast there. So I like melanotan before I go. We have a lake place that also helps protect me because, and I do want to talk about it in a second. Melanotan does give us a protective uh, 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 tan. Okay, I guess that's the word I'm looking for. But that doesn't mean we still don't sunblock. Okay, it's not going to stop that damage. It's just going to stop the burning. So yes, theoretically, if I don't use sunblock at all, ever, and I use melanotan, that's going to be better than not using sunblock ever. But we really want to combine those two things, but have the comfort and the knowledge that there is a protective tan there that we're hopefully not going to burn, at least not like we normally do. But still, we want to block those UV rays. Okay, it's still important. And so I actually had a customer talking to me yesterday that said I had to learn that. Like you had told me, but I just never burned, so I just quit using sunblock. And then I started noticing some aging of my skin. I realized, okay, actually, because what can happen with some people, because they don't technically get burnt, they spend more time in the sun. So they're getting actually more UV rays, but they're just not burning. And so he had to have a couple spots burned off. Like you said, he's like, never had that before. Learn my lesson. I'm going to sunblock now, wear caps. We've got so many cool like clothing that we can wear these days. We can wear that really, like I call them fishing shirts, but you can be at the beach and just wear it. They're light and cool, but they actually have, SPF protection in them. Unless you just want to be shirtless the whole time, but we can put those on. We're starting to feel like we're getting a little sun, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different good things out there that we can do to help protect our skin.
What's another peptide? And just give me, like, when you're talking about this melanotan, what's it doing? What's it? Obviously, it's not doing something. It's communicating something inside your
Yeah, so
body.
it's stimulating the actual melanocortin system, which is our tanning system. So it's causing that system to occur, which normally is what happens when we get sun, but we're doing it without sun. And because we can control the dosing, we can actually amplify that response. And actually, kind of one of the biggest things, and it is a subcutaneous injection, just FYI, daily, but that's painless. At least to start with. So what we do with our patients is we start them on a daily routine until they get kind of the base tan that they want. And it's always important, if anybody ever uses melanotan, to know that sunspots, moles, freckles, even areola will darken first. So it kind of freaks people out if you don't tell them that, because their skin's still white and all of a sudden things are darkening. But then 2 to 3 days after that, the skin darkens right behind it. And I don't think anybody really notices. It's just the patients kind of panic. They're like, oh my God, all of my freckles. Because I don't have freckles except for like when my melanotan kicks in, the freckles that are kind of under the skin come out. So it can be alarming. And then we move them over to just maintenance dosing, which typically is a couple times a week. And so one sidebar with melanotan before we move on is it also can stimulate libido and stimulate erections in men. So that can sometimes be a funny little side effect that patients don't realize that it occurs. PT141 that you and I have talked about before, using for straight up libido and erections, is a side chain of melanotan. So it's a piece of melanotan that they've split off. KPV, which is a peptide that is used for the gut, is another side chain of melanotan. I always say melanotan's kind of like, my son's into Transformers. It's kind of like from that movie Devastator, where it's like 6 Transformers that makes one. So we can make all these little different peptides from melanotan. It's kind of the mothership. So that's a really good peptide. I love it. For tanning, that's really the one. But for skin itself, the other one that I really like is called GHKCU. It's actually a copper-based peptide. We have GHKCU naturally in our body. It's been shown to be amazing for healing wounds, for just helping skin. But what it actually can do, studies prove that it can actually decrease the depth of lines and wrinkles by about 40%, but also increase collagen elasticity about 50%. So it's actually working at the cellular level of our collagen to decrease those lines and wrinkles, to actually making us look more youthful. So some people call GHKCU like Botox in a bottle, something like that. I always tell providers, don't freak out. You still need your Botox. It just makes the Botox work better, makes the results look nicer. It is important to remember with the GHKCU, it's used topical for what we're talking about right now. Actually, that's also was in my hair lecture. If you put it on the scalp, it can grow hair. So minoxidil has kind of always been the gold standard for growing hair. You can get it over the counter, minoxidil topical. GHKCU has been shown to be superior to minoxidil for hair growth. But the big difference for hair growth is anytime you stop minoxidil, you will lose 100% of the results that you got. Okay, it's called a rebound effect. All the hair is going to fall out if you stop it. No rebound effect with GHKCU. So like my patients, like I got asked, how many times do you prescribe minoxidil? I go, hardly ever. I mean, I use GHKCU because I can wean them off of it at some point. You'll never get them off minoxidil because they'll lose their hair. And so anyway, going back to GHKCU, though, we use it in a topical cream, basically. The nice thing is it's over the counter. So like, patients sometimes, or customers, are not even my patients, just Steve told me about this, and they walk in, they buy it off my shelf. We tell them how to use it. They turn around, they walk out the front door, which is nice for them. They don't have to have any obligation to us. But anytime you use something topically, you must give it 60 to 90 days to see those results. I would actually say with any skincare. And we try to we call it Luminate, by the way, kind of a cool little name. It's actually GHKCU topical, but the name that we use is Luminate. And we try to always tell patients with any type of skincare, whether it's Zoe with or without Luminate, you need to give 90 days hair, same way. You need to give all of this stuff true 90-day trials. So if Steve's going to walk in and say, nope, I'm only going to buy one bottle of Illuminate and that's all I'm ever going to buy, and if it works, I'll use more. I'm like, well, you're wasting your money. You're just not going to see the results in 30 days. So, but no, GHKCU is another amazing like topical peptide for this sort of thing.
So the one for the gut, was it FVP?
KTV?
Yeah. Talk about the gut thing, because, this is your skin, and this kind of ties back into your previous conversation about gut health.
Yeah, so gut health, the biggest thing to look at gut health and the easiest thing I could tell patients is do you pretty much every day have 1 to 2 what we would call normal bowel movements, okay? Or is it soft but yet formed? Or is it liquid, or are you not going every day? If you cannot tell me that you have 1 to 2 formed but soft bowel movements every day, I can nearly tell you with 100% certainty you have bad gut health. And patients probably wouldn't be surprised to know that probably 80+% of my patients would say, yeah, no, that's not me. Just like, for example, I was talking to a young lady who has alopecia areata, which is the bald spot, has had it recurrently for many, many years. And I think she was a little surprised when I said, tell me about your bowel habits. It's not the most sexy topic to have, but she was like, what do you mean? I was like, well, how often do you go to the bathroom? She's like, about every 4 to 5 days. And I said, until you fix that, you will not fix your alopecia areata. You just won't. And so the next thing that I would tell patients or providers, so let's prevent we're providers listening right now, is, and this was Dr. Cynthia Keller, who I just talked about. This was the point of her lecture, is we have all these different great things to help the gut, but you must fix that. By the way, most females are constipated. Vast majority of females walk around every day constipated. I think it starts out as little girls. They're taught like you only go to the bathroom at home. That's embarrassing. I always joke, guys got to go. They'll stop at the 7-Eleven and go to the bathroom, like side of the road. Where do we got to go? Girls won't do that. Like I realized that this was true when my daughter told me about how like she basically said, yeah, I'll hold it all day till I get home to go to the bathroom. Well, your body starts to learn that. You get a little bit of lazy gut, and it starts to you start to get constipated because of these social factors. And so you got to fix the constipation first, because all these cool things we can give people by mouth, if it doesn't make it down into the colon within a certain amount of time, it gets degraded and it does no good. So I thought that was actually a point I hadn't thought about when Cynthia said, I said, crap, that's genius. You got to fix the constipation. Then you start working on the gut. And we typically use to fix that. There's a prebiotic. It's actually a medication, but it's called lactulose. It's used like in cirrhosis and different things like that. But it's actually a very effective for constipation, and it's a prebiotic. And so, you really could start these patients out on lactulose, get them regular. You can titrate up or down to get Betsy Sue to where her bowel habits are where we want them. They can start mixing in things like BPC, like KPV, like lorazepam. These are different peptides that work a little bit differently that can start to return. Because if you remember from one of our gut talks before, Steve, we talked about the 2 major kinds of bacteria in our gut. We talk about obligate, and we talked about facultative anaerobes. And obligate should be the vast majority of our bacteria in our gut. But as we become more constipated or diarrhea, as we get our gut health off, those facultative anaerobes start to take over, which starts to kill our gut health. So like Dr. Seeds always says, everything in our body is a balance. And as long as we keep the proper balance, we're in good shape. So it's kind of like that judicial lady scale, everything needs to be in a proper balance. We need obligate to be more than facultative. And so you hear a lot of people with the term leaky gut. I used to think leaky gut used to make my brain just kind of like quiver. Like, what does that even mean? But now we know what it means. It means zonulin's taking over. It's causing the cells in our gut to get loose and leaky. and things are working their way into our gut, which is mainly one of the things is oxygen, because it's supposed to be a anti-oxygen environment. And as leaky gut occurs, as we get more oxygen in our gut, it allows that facultative anaerobes to take over. So you must fix the constipation, fix the leaky gut, which that's where your zonulins and your KPV, I mean, I'm sorry, your lorazepatide, your KPV, your BPC, those different peptides can come in. Uh, Butyrate, you and I've talked a lot about butyrate, which is a postbiotic, which can be amazing for the gut, but I do think the gut needs to be prepped for butyrate. And that's something we've been doing for a while. And that's a supplement over the counter through Body Bio, which can be an amazing, inexpensive, it can make huge differences. So yeah, gut health can be a complex thing. I just now, after all these years, feel like I'm starting to truly understand gut health. People do lots of really expensive tests to tell you what kind of bacteria in your gut. And I'm not knocking that stuff. I really don't do it by practice. I treat patients symptomatically and they seem to do great. I'm not knocking docs that spend hundreds of dollars on these different tests, but I always say, if it's not really going to change how I treat my patient, I don't know that that's something I want to spend my patient's money on. But to each their own. I'm not knocking it.
Alcohol impacts your gut biome as well in a negative way.
Yeah, there was that mantra a few years back that some alcohol every day can be really good for you. That's bullshit. Pardon my French. Alcohol just causes too many problems. It causes inflammation. Do I drink? I do. I'm not a big drinker though, and I tell my patients the less alcohol we can drink, the better off we are. Just go back to skin. People who drink daily and then quit drinking daily, they always tell me the same thing. Like, wow, everybody tells me my skin looks so much better. I'm like, yeah, you got all that damn inflammation out of your gut and out of your body. I mean, alcohol is just so inflammatory. So let's even go with that theory that low dose alcohol does some good for your cardiovascular health, but doesn't that have to be overridden by all the inflammation it's causing in our gut? And so I'm like, and they're literally talking about tiny, improvements in cardiac health. And my other thing is like, how many people truly drink like 1 to 2 drinks a day, every day? They either don't drink 1 to 2 drinks a day, or they drink more than 1 to 2 drinks a day, or they say it's 1 to 2 drinks. That's my other favorite. I only have 1 drink a day. It just happens to be half a bottle of wine in a glass, every day. So it's not 6 ounces of wine. That's not at all 4 to 6 ounces. It's not at all what it is.
Yeah. So many little ways to trip up, and these things, it all comes down to the cellular level. All these conversations that you and I have, I'm always trying to discern what's the pattern, where's the biggest place that you can start, and it's at that cellular level.
Yeah, I mean, the skin really is pretty. You laughed at when I say, it's a pretty simple topic, because there aren't these dramatic things that we need to do for the skin. It's hydrate. It's try to avoid the sun when we can. When we are going to go in the sun, let's be prepared with having a base coat, but let's also protect our skin with a good quality sunblock. Let's maybe do hydrofacials also to keep our skin looking healthy, but let's also really worry about that gut health. I think every topic that we do, we could bring 5 to 10 minutes back to the gut, because proper gut health affects nothing in a negative way. And so, gut health is just so important. And like I said, I put it up there with hormones. Most doctors, when you bring up the topic of hormones, they're just like, oh God, I don't want to talk about hormones. It just seems so complex that I just don't even want to go there. A lot of doctors, including myself, we like things that have one solution. Like Steve has strep throat. I give him amoxicillin. We're done. It's the perfect scenario. Unfortunately, in medicine, that's not the way it usually is. And so we really have to look at these things a little in depth. So I just really encourage patients and maybe even providers to listening. When you think about the skin, don't think about it so simplistic that we're just like, hey, there's a rash on the skin. What cream do I put on it? Sure. let's not be ridiculous with this. If they got rolled in poison ivy, I think we can think like that. Okay. If they went out and got a bad sunburn, I think we can think like that. But that's not usually what they're seeing. They're usually seeing actual rashes and dermatitises that are actually linked back to the gut. And how can I long term make this patient quit having these issues? Dr. Thompson, the guy that got me into this business, he gave a lecture. So it's open knowledge. He lectured in front of a big group about how he kept breaking out on his forearms. And, he tried everything to make it go away. Guess what it was? He was allergic to gluten, so he concentrated on avoiding gluten. We didn't even talk about, foods, like we can take this a step further and look at food sensitivities and what are those causing to the gut, because we can fix the perfect gut in theory, but if we keep putting foods into it, alcohol, things we're allergic to, that's not going to work either. So, his rash, by the way, he said now has been gone for 3 years since he simply took gluten out of his diet. That's what the fix was. And he goes, by the way, now I go to the bath. He always says, I thought going to the bathroom 5 times a day was normal, and so, but he took the gluten out of his diet and realized, oh my gosh, he tried to go vegan. That wasn't the answer because his gluten intake went up as he became a vegan because, so many things are grain based. So the good Dr. Huggins, which is my local GI doctor, who is a close friend of mine, who is an amazing GI doctor, told me this, and this is his gut tip of the day. If you will limit, as we age, dairy and gluten, your visits to the GI doctor will diminish tremendously, if not completely go away. So as we get older, we just simply don't tolerate gluten and dairy like we used to. And what do Americans love most? Gluten and dairy. So just food, pardon the bad pun, food for thought.
All right. Who knew we were going to start talking about sun and protection and end up in our gut? But that's the way that things are. If you want to work with Dr. Kris and you're willing to take responsibility for your health journey, where would they go, Dr. Kris?
So easiest place is to the website, just theresearchclinic.com, hit the little, consultation button. And then most likely Lauren, who now is my virtual assistant, most likely will be the one that reaches out to you, or maybe one of the other ladies if she's busy. Usually that response is fairly quick. And then she can see what your interests and likes are and kind of tell you what we can or can't do. You're also always welcome to call the 817-599-9902. But like everybody's, we're really crazy busy, and sometimes the phones are actually the slower way to get a hold of us. We prefer the website because that goes right into an email box with somebody waiting for that email to come in so they can respond to it.
Awesome. All right. So recovering from skin damage led to the gut, but I imagine you could recover from all sorts of other damage by honoring the gut. Great conversation. I'm going to roll the outro now, Dr. Kris. Let's see what comes up. Let's see what your hair looks like here. Thanks for joining the Dr. Kris podcast. If you learned something today and you want to connect and get more information, visit our website, www.DrKris.Life, where you can find more great information or even schedule a time to learn how you can engage with Dr. Kris. Be sure to follow, like, share, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Dr. Kris podcast. Dr. Kris, good combo. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you. Skin in the gut.
All right, skin in the gut. Stay in the shade.